Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, and unicorns. Welcome to this stream after 2 weeks, and Sorceress is there. And she says, coffee check, chocolate check, full screen check. Wonderful. I'm not quite sure if I'm already ready for full screen, but either way, thank you so much for dropping by. I hope there is a higher turnout than last time, but anyway, actually, I don't really care that much, because as long as some people like you are here, I'm happy to stream that as long as there's at least one person, I'm not streaming into the void. As always, be sure to stay hydrated, so whenever the word with you, that starts with you and ends with Nicorn comes up, let's all have a sip of water. This time I invested in ice cubes because, oh my god, the weather, it's horribly hot in here. And but right now there's a thunderstorm cooking up outside, so if there might be some rumbling or screaming children, we all know it's due to the weather. One thing is I hope this stream goes without any lags, because I'm rendering on one processor core there. Or you know what, I will close this because it's too hot already. I've been rendering for my upcoming video a little still life of a computer in this 2002 year, and everything is CG. I just needed a pan towards the screen, and I went a little overboard with it. So if you follow me on Twitter, you probably know how much I overscoped on this. But anyway, it's done, and I'm quite happy with it. Cool. Okay, so what's up for today? What are we going to experience today? You have a Vincent Price mustache again. Oh yes, my Vincent Price mustache. This is usually I try to get everything in order there in terms of beard by Monday, but apparently I couldn't be bothered to do this. So I got a little mustache there, and maybe I will just emphasize it there with a little line that we all can have a very proper evening. And just let's say unicorn. I need a sip of ice cold water. Unicorn. Ah, so good. Can you do a ghoulish? Oh, the ghoulish foes are already at the door and about to break through. Maybe I should do some more Vincent Price impressions. Okay, like I said, what's in store for us today? Well, some of you probably know or heard of it that the last week on Friday, I was invited to give a micro talk at the Game Dev Days in Graz. The event was digital only, so you might already have seen this talk that I'm about to give now. But this time I don't have to restrict myself to 7 minutes. And you know that I have a tendency for rambling, so please stop me if I'm going too far out. Yes, I will. The talk is about color picking for people who aren't too skilled with picking colors. Since I work as a colorist, this is pretty much what I do all day, every day. And I thought I'd show you some rules of thumb on how to pick colors that are appealing and not offending, in pretty much things that you can do to make colors look pretty. You got an emote. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Thank you for your subscription. This is awesome. You know what? Congratulations. You are I think my first subscriber there officially. So thank you so much. Cheers to you. And on that happy note, let's start with my little presentation. Let me switch over there to OpenOffice Impress, and I'm not too impressed with this software, but hey, anything is better than PowerPoint. So I'm going to show you how to do some little color picking for your games, how to avoid the gravest mistakes, and then we'll be looking at this in practice. I just downloaded the Cyberpunk 2077 trailer, and we'll be looking at it in terms of color schemes, color harmony, and play around a little bit with that. If that sounds cool, then I'll say unicorn again, so that we all have a sip of water. It's so hot. Probably it's also because I've been rendering, like I said, for the past couple of days, and this machine here is my oven. It's like a furnace. I usually should render only during the winter months, I feel. Okay, so let's start here with this beautiful presentation. Does it start? Oh my god. My mouse pointer is frozen. There we go. So I don't see the chat right now because there is my slide notes are open there. Thank you so much. Open Office. You know what? I will switch there my there we go, so that I can. This was the wrong thing. That I can follow the chat should there anything be. And now I dock the window to. Christ. I docked the window accidentally to OBS, so let's undock this, and there it is again. Okay, I got things sorted out. It wouldn't be a Pixel Prophecy stream if there weren't any kind of technical difficulties. Okay, so let's give this another try. Mouse pointer frozen again, but I think yeah, this works now. Okay, so let's start. If we look at these screenshots, you probably notice that some games there are pretty much respected and highly acclaimed critically, but what they all do have in common is they don't look too appealing, frankly, especially not if I'm scrolling past my social feed on Twitter and one of those screenshots comes up. Yeah, I'm not very much inclined to click them because they don't look too appealing. On the other hand, those screenshots I would click open because at first glance they look very nice, appealing and interesting. So even at a very small thumbnail size, you can clearly tell those two sets apart. So it's not the details really that makes something pleasing to look at or interesting on first glance, even at thumbnail size. Instead it's the colors. And yeah, hi. I'm Phil. You probably know me, but as an introduction, I earn my living as a colorist and I make video images, and images in general just look pretty and appealing, and I do this mostly through the use of color. Not only, but mostly. So in this very short little talk, I'll first explain how to find a dominant color for your game, and then we will build from that up. We build a scheme, and all the while adhering to color harmony. Okay, the first question I want to ask yourself is what colors fit my game? And if you're not thinking a lot about certain colors, this might be already a little bit hard. So Bruce Shelley, the designer of Age of Empires, said in an interview once that in Age of Empires the sun is always shining, there's never any kind of bad weather, as it's outside here now, thankfully. So this translated to a dominant color, this could be this yellowish green there. This is some kind of blend between the grass and the dust there. So this looks very sunny, very friendly, and it's not overly saturated. Alternatively, if you have pretty much the same perspective on a game, but you want it to be oppressing, cold, inhospitable, you probably settle on something that like this. This is a grayish color, bluish, not too friendly, not too inviting. And yeah, but as always, you can look to art, not just games. You can look to movies, to paintings, pretty much anything where you feel, yeah, this has this certain quality that I want in my game. It's not very important that you get the color right at the first try, just to have something to start on where to build your scheme around it. In the end, it's always about tweaking, but you gotta start somewhere. Okay, so how to choose the next colors for our scheme once we got the dominant colors, because the problem is we got so many colors. There are literally infinite amount of possible choices, and this is noise. Literally, we have some color noise here, and we all know with noise, since there is nothing in there for us to go on, it's really hard to find anything to go on. So what do we do with noise? Well, we try to limit the information that's being presented, and in this case I limit it to the blue and yellow pixels, and already it looks much more interesting and appealing because we're not weighed down by stuff that is not as important, and it already looks like a pattern, or at least has a certain interest to it. And with patterns, our brains just love to see and find patterns in pretty much anything. Here's an example of a random photo of, I think this is San Francisco's Chinatown. And yeah, there are pretty much all the colors in there, and it looks like, yeah, like your average snapshot. And if I limit now the amount of colors and have it look like this, suddenly it becomes more cinematic, more appealing. You have this, it gets a quality of its own. If I switch back to how it was before and how it was after, you can see I pretty much eradicated everything that was blue in this image there. And like I said already, by limiting the information there, you already gain something. So color schemes are this kind of limiting information when it comes to color, because they are essentially a set of rules or a guideline of which colors are allowed and which colors aren't. So we just need to choose a color scheme, right? Just problem is how to choose a color scheme. And thankfully, as with color schemes, like I said, that are rules, there are even rules to picking the rules, and this is color harmony. So you've probably seen any version of this, the color wheel or the color circle. And yeah, this is a very handy tool to demonstrate how color theory works. Well, not, yeah, color harmony, essentially, because everything is pretty self-evident there. And we'll be using a tool there to show different kinds of color schemes. So yes, hue is not color. I've used color now when I made hue, and I don't think I mentioned hue before. But the important thing is now this distinction becomes necessary down the line, because, yeah, like I said, color is not hue. So what's it? Hue is what you see there on this rainbow strip. Those are the different hues, and inside of those hues you can choose a certain color that has a certain tint or a certain shade, but the bottom line is, independent of how bright something is or how saturated something is, as we see here, the hue for everything in this square is the same. It's red, but there are an infinite amount of colors depending on how much you saturate this red or how bright it is, and so on and so forth. But like I said, this is independent of hue. This is important. Hue is like a Borg. That is also true. So yeah, resistance to color theory is possible but futile. Okay, so this is my little thumbnail, or, well, it's not a thumbnail, it's my reminder to get, where is my Firefox? There it is, to get into this wonderful tool here. This is peloton.com. And this is a great tool to get to show you how color theory works, how color harmonies works, and also you can download color schemes that you make. Okay, first let's if I move here around on the color wheel and look at the different hues, you can see there it already updates our palette there. And if we just settle on something like this orange here, congratulations, we already got a color scheme. Those are different colors of brightness and saturation, but effectively you can just with one color there make a color scheme. And if we look at something like, next slide please, at this level here in Greece, you can already see the hue is just this kind of red, and depending on how much it's saturated, how bright it appears, you can make something out of just one single color. This is a so-called monochromatic color scheme, as indicated here by this little thumbnail there. So congratulations, we already have a monochromatic color scheme. This is not very interesting, as we've seen with Greece. It can work, and usually it does, but most of the time it's more interesting when we add another color to our scheme. And I do this by adding a complementary color, which, as the name implies, it complements the dominant color that we have. And if I move one of those colors here, the other one moves in tandem. It's perfectly reflected through the middle of the color wheel. And the nice thing about this monochromatic color scheme is that it always looks appealing. If we just have our attention there to this palette preview here, when I'm there in the orange, the complementary is this friendly blue there, and if I go towards purple, then it becomes green, and so on. So no matter what you pick, those two colors always appear pleasing. The problem usually, as I've said before, is with noise when there are too many hues in there. So examples of this. There we go. So this is, for example, a complementary color scheme. It's not entirely complementary. As you can see, there is this yellow totem pole in there, but overall it's just this cyan green and this coral red there. So both just reflected through the middle. So you see this, like I said, quite often, as it is here, for example, in Control, where everything is this cyan greenish there. And yeah, this the complementary color usually really pops. It has the highest color contrast, as we say. With contrast, you probably know this, when something has a lot of contrast, it says, yeah, it's clearly differentiable, if that's a word, between what is bright and what is dark. So the contrast is high. And also this is with hues and colors. We say the color contrast is high, because you can't have a higher contrast between two colors than on the opposite sides of the color wheel. And this, like I said, is complementary scheme. And we see it also in movies. It's this orange and teal look that I think we've all seen ad nauseum. It's where all those superhero movies from the early 2010s pretty much looked all the same, because it was this very very distinct yellow, orange and teal bluish scheme there. And it has become, at least in my profession, a sort of a running joke that if you want to make something cinematic or just have a satire of a color, of a look, you pick this kind of look. It's pretty much what we have here, orange and teal, or teal and orange. So yeah, but those colors have the highest contrast. Okay, but there are more interesting schemes, of course, or more harmonies, because sometimes it just having two colors where the other color really pops, like I said, often works, but usually you need more colors, and the more colors you have, the trickier everything gets. So let's have a look at the next harmony, and those are adjacent. This is the adjacent color scheme. And also, as the name implies, yeah, I don't want this here. I just want to move my mouse. Thank you. As the name applies, those colors are close to each other, adjacent on the color wheel. And also this here is a very harmonious color scheme. It's nothing that is very offending, because they play together well. The problem comes only if those colors are too closely together, because now it's pretty hard to tell if this color here is just a darker version or less saturated version of this purple hue, or this one is just brighter. And again, some kind of ambiguity starts there, and especially when you need more than one color, you really want to tell them apart. So as soon as we spread it here by, like I say, a distance of 40 degrees there on the hue curve or the hue wheel, things are already looking up. So for example, if we have, let's say, a water level, something like this, and I want my dominant color to be this blue, then maybe we get some plants there, which might be this color, and some enemies maybe of this color, or just some background. But then we need something to be clearly legible against this background. So how do we do this? Well, we add a complementary color. Like I said, it always complements what we have here. And look at this. If you want something to stand out of your underwater level, just make it yellow or orange. Or if it's a jungle level, that's more towards green. Something that's red stands out. If we're here in the desert, something that is blue stands out, and so on and so forth. What just comes to mind now is a Journey, which has a color scheme that's more on the adjacent scale than anything else, where we have the red of the protagonist, but it works as a standout color because everything else is very closely limited to this yellow and orange. So if something is of a deep and saturated red, it just pops more. Okay, so this was the adjacent color scheme, and let's bring up the presentation again there. And this pretty much the first scene there in Kentucky Route Zero is of this adjacent color scheme. So it's, like I said, it's nothing offending, and it works very well together in harmony. And if we needed something to pop, for example, maybe if we want to emphasize something, I would personally put some kind of greenish light here where I want my emphasis to be, because as we know here, some kind of yellow green there complements everything and makes it pop. Will this be uploaded on YouTube as well? Yes, it will. As always, once the stream is over, 24 hours later, it will go up on YouTube, so you can always have a look at this. Okay, so let's get back to our Peloton here. And there is next harmony is the Triad, and this one works here pretty much as we've come to expect it. It's just 3 colors that aren't as closely related on the wheel as the adjacent scheme here. But instead, you can think of this as a triangle, as a polygon. When I'm moving one vertex here, the other moves in tandem. So no matter where I am, those are always symmetrical. And you've probably realized how this is with color theory. You have this circle, and everything on this circle that moves in relation to each other is always a good sign that you're in some kind of harmony. And also we can see here in the preview, of course, even those look quite harmonious, even if I'm in this toxic green there with purple. If for those of you who played Day of the Tentacle, well, one tentacle is red, is purple, and the other is green. The green ones I think has suction cups that are purple, and the purple one has greens. Why is this? Yeah, because they are of a wonderful, where do we have it? There we go. This green and purple, because they are pretty much the furthest apart on the color wheel. So yeah, the Triad. Also here, I would very much suggest that you don't keep those 2 colors too closely together, because like I said, there is a difference in hue between those 2 dominant colors there, but it's not enough. And when you choose or go for a Triad, well, of course you want to get the biggest impact. So I would usually say to have it, if you're not breaking the rules intentionally, have something like this kind of 40 degrees, 30 degrees distance there on the color wheel, so you're always sure. Also important, one rule of thumb is don't oversaturate. We can see here by default everything here falls in this medium saturation, medium brightness, because if we are too saturated, you see everything here becomes really gaudy no matter where you are. Sometimes this can work very well, but most of the time you want to try to keep it not too bright and not too saturated, but also not too drab or too dark. But yeah, if you stay somewhere in between bright and dark and saturated and low saturation, you're pretty good to go. For lower saturation, this is also a more of a satire look. If I just take this adjacent color scheme here and go towards here in the browns or the yellows and turn down saturation and brightness, look at this. We got every shooter in the late 2000s where they all were brown, and some just had this maybe just some standout color, but they always look the same. Okay, so let's see a Triad in action. And in Old Man's Journey, for example, we have this wonderful Triad here. The game overall is very, very appealing. But as you can see there, as soon as you start limiting yourself, you won't see any kind of purple there or any other very saturated, very bright color. No neon greens, for example. So this also having not just the hues themselves, but also the saturation overall on a similar level really helps to sell something and to have it look harmonious. Need all those colors. We got the tetrade, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, and this is like the Triad, but instead of a triangle there, it's a square, or well, a rectangle essentially. So again, try not to keep them too closely together, because now all we got here is a complementary scheme. But if you really need to have a lot of colors there, those are your friends, or this kind of scheme there is your friend. Again, the problem might be, yeah, but my game needs more than 4 colors. It's not an NES game where I can limit my palette to just 4 colors. And yes, you are right. But thing number 1, I'm talking about hues. I intentionally said colors there, wink wink. Because as we can see here in the palette, when I manage to zoom in, which I can't because I can't really zoom in. Let's zoom in like this. Yeah, you get all those different kinds of shadings of tints and shades there, depending on how much you mix it with white or with black. So there is a lot actually variety you can get out of just one color, as we've seen with grease, and also two colors. So I would really strongly suggest try to use as little colors or hues as you can, and then start building from there. Because most of the time when you have UI and you want to emphasize certain things, such as health bars and also mana bars, but then of course we got different kinds of enemies and you really need to differentiate them, and soon you're very prone to go the route with just put different colors on my enemies. But really I urge you to not try to pile too many colors onto your game. And if you have to add another color, for example, you really need a fifth color, don't have it too closely on the color wheel of one of those other colors that you have, because you want to keep the color contrast high for your players to be able to differentiate between those colors. What I haven't gone into yet is designing for people with problems discerning between certain kinds of colors. For example, there is I think 10-12% of males have problems with green and red to tell them apart. And maybe if you have a mini map where all the good things are green and the bad things are red, and it looks pretty much the same to anyone. So designing for people with vision deficiencies is an entire topic on its own, but I'm not going into that right now. But you can probably tell that if something is only differentiated by color and nothing else, it's not too good. Maybe you want to add some pattern or a different shape as well. Okay, so we've seen the tetrade, and now let's see this all in action. So I've made here this wonderful little mock-up, which I took inspirations from the recently released page on itch.io, where I think this is what we can assume as programmer art colors. I mean, it's the first thing that you go to, right? Sky is blue, clouds are white, mountains are gray, and foreground, the grass is green and the soil is brown, and there is a health bar or something and some hearts. So this would be the number one go-to. And sorry, I noticed someone in the chat. Frank says, it looks like you have microphone cutouts for a few seconds every now and then. This is bad. I think this might have been due to the rendering of the next slides there. I hope it's not too bad. Please let me know if where my sound dropped out, so I can readdress those issues there. Okay, so let's assume this is a color scheme, and you might be tempted to say, but I really need all those colors. For example, those little pickups, they need to be yellow because they need to be easy to spot against the background and so on. But also my player, has a certain color which I can't really change and so on. So I really need all those colors. Well, do you? This is the monochromatic color scheme, where I just picked one kind of this blue color, and all I did was just vary the different brightness and saturation levels. And you can see here clearly everything stands out as it is, with just one hue and different colors in this hue. Might be a little bit too much, but for certain smaller games where you, like I said, you don't really need a lot of colors when it comes down to it, it might be enough. Black is monochrome. Oh God, we got a black screen. Yeah, this is this is true. So there we go. I think I just had a look at my program window there. There we go. So this is just one colors. I'm sorry, apparently, impress, like I said, doesn't impress me as much. Also, thank you for pointing this out. So like I said, we can make do with just one color there. And the important thing, as you've seen, is when I switch back and forth, is the background and the foreground. The best thing to have them stand out, that we really can tell. For example, in this one, it's really hard to see the player, the cat character, while in this, it's pretty easy at a glance to see what's hurting the player and where the player is and what's important to them. So the number one thing to do this differentiation between background and foreground is through brightness or contrast, actually. So here in the background, I'm never going that anything is darker or more saturated than in the foreground, and this already gives it some kind of depth. This also works in 3D, of course, when you have some kind of fog or slight haze that goes into the background. But overall, yeah, this it's almost number one importance is to have your game legible. That means that players can see at a glance what is important to them, maybe what hurts them, where they are, and so that they can make the decisions, and everything else on top of it should come on top of it. Okay, and as Sorceress said, also happened once before. Please let me know which slide it was that you didn't see before. So because at the end I can go through all the slides and then, yeah, like I said, pick up where I had some dropouts. So yeah, I'm really lucky then. It's black again, right? There we go. I'm really lucky that it worked for my presentation there. So yeah, this was the monochromatic color scheme with just one hue. So next up, we might want to go and make this more of a desert scene. So I say, let's go complementary, and everything is either yellow or brownish, and the other hue is this kind of sky blue there. And instead of you making the sky blue, I just made everything that is important for the player blue. So everything that benefits the player in this example here is blue. The player themselves are blue, the pickups are blue, the hearts are blue. So even at a glance you can tell if something is blue, well, then it's going to be good for me, and everything that is like this dark brown there might be an enemy. So the slide must have fallen out of the carousel. Yeah, since this is halfway GPU accelerated and halfway not, I'm not really quite sure how Impress works. Okay, this is personally my favorite here. It's also just a complementary color or color scheme where I thought, yeah, I don't have to go that deep into the colors themselves, that I don't have to have this kind of saturated yellow or saturated blue. So with just this greenish gray, you can also make something that works, and the red now really stands out against this. Didn't he said this is program art, this looks 1,000 better than anything I could do. Like I said, it's program art in terms of color picking, and without even really putting much thought into it. If you just pick two colors there, you say one monochromatic scheme and you want something like this, and just limit yourself to those hues and pick the colors out of this one and limit yourself to those. Pretty much you can, and color everything in, you can arrive at something like this easily. And if you want more colors, there we go. Oh, well, I'm not trusting this program anymore, so I always check with my program window. Yeah, we can have a triad here where I say, yeah, we need 3 colors so that the health pickups also stand out. And again, it's more or less a palette swap. That's the art is the same, but now it's nighttime. So pretty much everything just is derived from this initial screen, this one that we had here. So you can make pretty much everything from this. So and again, I hear you say, yeah, but don't games nowadays have 16.7 million colors? And yes, of course it's true. I'm just referring to the dominant colors because, of course, when you have let's say humanoid characters with all skin tones and they have their own maybe uniform or just attire, the important thing is, like I said, that everything works together. That, for example, you don't decide on what your main game character looks without thinking about, okay, what's the overall environment of my game. For example, if I design a cool character and he's a frog and he's all green and so on, and then I realize that yeah, the game is played in the jungle and also the jungle backgrounds are green and so on. So, well, sorry, it's black again. Should work in tandem, and a lot of things you can do with lighting, but yeah, that's a whole different topic. So yeah, this was the 7-minute talk that I gave, and at this point, like I said, the possibilities to do with colors that you can do with colors are endless, but the time is up, and I think I've spoken more now than 7 minutes. Cheers to us. And my point was that if you just adhere to some kind of color harmony and really just be conscious about it, And when I come across your screenshots in my feed, I just can't help but tap and open them because I get pulled in by just how harmonious the colors look. And now you can focus on the easy part, and that is making a game fun. But I know nothing about that. And then, of course, I got some further reading and sources. I think I put there's a link to my slides up somewhere. I think I can put it in the YouTube description later on if you're interested about the psychology of color. So those are lots of interesting reads there. Reads. Well, that's not. Readings also doesn't work. Books or articles, let's say, interesting articles there. There we go. Audio cut out a little bit again, like 2 words. Okay, so if it's just 2 words, but 3 words, I think should be the problem. And I think I realized what the problem was. Black screen again, right? There we go. I was rendering. Still, I didn't shut off the rendering there, so I think one core was still happily chugging along on my rendering. So maybe this would have been also part of the problem. And of course, Impress. Okay, so what the hell is this? Because now we are transitioning over to looking at the Cyberpunk 2077 trailer that's come out, and because it got a lot of strong colors there, I thought it might be an interesting piece to demonstrate different color harmonies and even play around a little and see how things appear differently. More jewel cases, thankfully not just a few case studies. Yeah, for those who don't follow what jewel cases means, I was modeling a CD jewel case in Maya for dozens of hours because all those little nooks there and crannies and little nips there. I got a whole lot of respect for anyone who designed this, because just thought doing this in 3D would take an hour or so, and then it was just more. So I'm pretty happy that it's done. Sorceress says, I noticed Peloton uses red, yellow, blue color wheel rather than RGB. It obviously affects what is 30 and 180 degrees apart, but what is the logic behind this choice? I think their default logic is I'm not quite sure why they say something is by default 30 degrees or 45 degrees. In the end, like I said, to me it's always important that you can tell the different hues apart. Like I said, that if something appears when it's brighter, then it looks as if it's the same hue as another color there. So the point is, I think that what's most important is that to keep things balanced there on the color wheel. And like I said, which brings us now to Cyberpunk, and we will be looking at this in the software that I work at, which is DaVinci Resolve, or the Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve, because Blackmagic bought DaVinci and DaVinci made Resolve. Point being is, we'll be looking at a little bit of scopes and video scopes. Something like this. This is a vectorscope display, and for us, just a short primer that we all understand, that we are all on the same page and know what we are looking at. Just had to make sure that it's not a black screen again. So yeah, this is a vectorscope, and essentially it's, where's my mouse? It works like this. This vectorscope plots the hue circularly, so you also got your 360 degrees of hue, but it's just different as Peloton does it, because apparently with the color wheel, as Sorceress discovered, more or less everyone can do their own thing, but this is standardized for video display, and the saturation is measured from the center. So if you just got a hot white dot in the middle of something, it means it's a black and white image. On this vectorscope, you don't see how bright something is, only what hue and how saturated something is, and this pretty much takes all the pixels in an image and plots them accordingly, and the more denser it becomes, the more whiter it is, the more pixels are in that overall in this portion of the screen, or not the portion of the screen. This looks sounds like it's dependent on where on the screen it is. No, it's just yeah, pretty much sample all the pixels and then plot them in this vectorscope there. So like I said, yeah, hue is radially and saturation goes outwards, and you know what, if we fill this all in with color, it pretty much looks like this. So like I said, in the middle something is little to no saturated, in the center it's no saturation at all, and the further outwards something goes, the more saturated this certain color is. If we look at it, you can see there are those little squares for R, M, B, C, G and Y. And those stand for red, magenta, blue, cyan, green and yellow. So red is always at around 11 o'clock, magenta and purple starts at 1 or 2 o'clock, blue is at 3, 3:30 o'clock, cyan is close to 6 and so on. So most important at least in my work are always the skin tones, and yeah, just where usually the skin tones of a human person lie. And this is this white diagonal between yellow and red. This is nothing that's really standardized in anything. It's just a guideline so that we know there where we are. So just looking at this scope readout, for example, I would say we are looking at something maybe with a lot of a sky, because there are a lot of pixels that tend to go towards blue. Maybe have a little bit of foliage or plants are in there, because it's a little bit of green and yellow. And then we got maybe it's a close-up of a face with a blue sky and some trees in the background. This, at least from the readout, is what I would see that is. So again, this I just keep this up there so that we know that essentially it works like this. And when we're in Resolve, it will also plot all those values there with the appropriate colors so that we know what's going on. Okay, I hope this wasn't too much in terms of theory. But fear not, I'm happy to explain everything again. So yeah, this is DaVinci Resolve. Yeah, I'm not going to do a tutorial on the software, just that we know what we are looking at. Again, here is this the hue circle that I had before, and let's just switch on there the scopes. So here I got all those scopes here, and you can see also the vector scope being this one here. You know what? I just make there one vector scope that we know what's going on. So you can see there pretty much all the colors are evenly distributed. Why has it this strange shape of maybe a flower bud or something? That's due to the color, not the color scheme, the color space that we're working in and of my monitor, because this is also a big part of my job is color gamut, which is which displays are able to correctly display what color until what saturation. I'm not going to bother with this right now. It's just let's try to move. I just diminish now the saturation, and you can see what's happening there in the vector scope. That something now it's just black and white there, and it's just this hot dot there in the middle. And the more I saturate something, the further certain colors move out. And when I'm oversaturating something, you can see there it just clips there, because it can't go further in a certain color channel, and this is why we get this strange shape there. Okay, this was quite a lot of theory again, but just to show you, maybe, you know what, I make this a little bit brighter that you can see better here the readout, something like this. What's also possible, what we'll be doing now is that we're changing the hues, and we're changing, for example, the saturation of certain hues. For example, in this here, if I'm just pulling down the saturation for red, you can see what's happening here. Everything that's red becomes desaturated, and this is being reflected here on the vector scope. Same thing if I just take out the blue, for example, or the cyan in this case. And yeah, this is, as I've said in the presentation before, diminishing noise, because sometimes you don't need certain colors and you can completely take them out of the equation. And sometimes when colors, as I said before, when they are too closely adjacent to each other on the color wheel, you might want to collapse them that they're the same hue. For example, let's say I'm not too happy with this yellowish green here. I want it to be either, let's say, orange or yellow, or either cyan and nothing in between. And this is why I'm able to just pick the hue there and move the hue itself around. For example, I'm just folding it over there into this cyan, and then I make a hard cut and fold the other side into this yellow-orange there. And so I'm able to just, you can see this ugly wedge that's going on there. This is, again, something that I also have to do is, to just collapse hues. Also, again, in an attempt to diminish the amount of different hues we have in an image. Okay, again, too much theory. Let's have a look at pretty pictures there. And here, this is the overview of all the shots that are in the trailer. And again, like I said, I picked it just because it looked so nice and the colors are so strong, and there's probably a lot for us to just see and find out what I've talked about there in the presentation before. Okay, so there are a lot of colors in this shot here. So let's start with something that's maybe this one here with more easier to grasp color scheme. So I bring in here now my scope, and you can see here from all the colors that we have, nothing is yellow, nothing is green. It's pretty much just this adjacent color scheme there that we've seen here on Peloton. So if I wanted to recreate this, let's zoom this out, I would choose this adjacent color scheme there and just put it there towards the purple, and maybe pull the hues apart a little more, something like this. So, and this is pretty much the color scheme of this shot here. And again, it doesn't matter how many colors there are on your characters and so on, because the lighting itself is staged in a way that no white light is being emitted, or even if it is, it's just not strong enough that anything just becomes overly saturated in the color, like I said, like yellow or green, that you don't want. For example, now if I want to make something here stand out, maybe let's pick this logo here. Maybe for some reason I want to be that this is very important. I just select it here, and yeah, I'm just keying it that I'm only using this portion there of the screen. And like I said, I can do this by trying the complementary colors. So I'm just doing a pretty hack job now. But as you can see, what's happening there on the vector scope, I'm just moving this hue here from cyan over to this greenish yellow there, and bump its saturation. And if you're looking at this, even if it's quite small, you can really see there just from the colors, unless you're colorblind or visually impaired when it comes to color perception, this really stands out. But again, colors are not the number one thing to make something stand out at a glance. First, there comes brightness and value, as we call it. Magenta is the best color. Yes, it's. I agree. Magenta and purple are very interesting colors because they don't get used often for, I don't know why. Essentially because I don't know. Maybe it's this tired connotation of it's a girly color or something. But I mean, purple was used by the royalty traditionally as a color, so it's a very royal color essentially. And if you want, by the way, let's undo this. If we want to change here the color, for example, I'm just taking here a spin on the wheel and change the entire hue of the entire scene there. And it largely works, even if I pull this here, for example, towards, let's go the other way around, towards red. But you can see here, for example, this is strange things that happens with color. If I just, like I said, rotated the entire wheel there, and now it's in the red, suddenly this adjacent color scheme that we had before, this one there, doesn't look as appealing anymore on this portion. And this is why personally I would pull closer together all those different hues. For example, this green here and this red doesn't really work quite well together, so I would take here the red and just move it also towards the green, and maybe also the yellow a bit, and the green I would pull maybe a little bit towards the blue, Yeah, and we're pretty closely to what we had before, just in green. But yeah, this was just to demonstrate that it doesn't always work if you just turn the color wheel. Sorcerer says, perhaps because it's not in the rainbow, being a mixture of red and blue wavelength at opposite ends of the rainbow. It might be, yes, because the wavelength overlap essentially, because we start with very long waves. I think, 300 nanometers or something. I really should know this, but I don't know it off the top of my head. Where the perception from infrared starts to red, that we actually don't see it, or we can see something as red. And then we go over to yellow, green, blue, and once we are there in the deep blue, this is why blue, for example, looks pretty dark essentially to us, and then it starts going to purple, and then it drifts outside. It becomes ultraviolet if the wavelength gets shorter, and we can't really perceive them. And this is this blend here where the wavelengths between blue and red start overlapping, and this is how we perceive as purple. 650 for red and 350 nanometers for blue, she says, and I think this is correct. Again, I don't know it off the top of my head. I used to, but then I wasn't quite sure. Then I got self-aware, and now I really don't know it. But yes, those values look very, very correct to me. And if not, you can Google it easily. And yes, with color, because it's such a thing that has to do a lot with perception, the problem is everything is psycho-visual, as we call it, because some colors, even if they are mathematically exactly the same saturated as other colors, for example, we perceive them to be brighter or darker. As we can see here, essentially all those colors there on this rainbow there on the bottom are saturated pretty much the same, but blue appears much darker there, and purple as, for example, yellow or green does. And this is also a lot to do with our perception system, because this all harkens back to the good old days of cave people, where it was most important to differentiate between different shades of green, because everything was just green. With the vegetation, it was really important to differentiate what is poisonous, for example. So it's much easier to see something in green that goes to blue or goes to red than, for example, in blue that tends to go to green, for example. So if this is also something, like I said, you have to be on the lookout for. So if you want blue to appear as bright as green does, you have to lower green or desaturate blue and pump its brightness and so on. Like I said, it's an entirely different can of worms there, but suffice it to say, it has a lot to do with how we perceive colors. And at the end, I always say, if it looks right on a calibrated monitor, it is right, because there's this whole field of color science that deals just with stuff like that. Okay, so again, we are always, for those next shots, in this same color scheme here. So colors, again, is a good way of just describing a certain place or an environment that we don't. For example, I don't know where those shots or those scenes take place, but just from the color, they feel like they fit together, right? They always got this purple, red, blue, so nothing yellow, nothing green is here. For example, this one here is somewhere completely different, and now there is no real red here, no real purple. So now the question comes, but there is red here, isn't there? Those shiny pants that are red, or his collar here, this stitching inside of his jacket is red. Why do I say there is nothing red here? Yes, it is red, but let me just pick the color here and see it here on the wheel. You can see there, it's not going to be as red as something, or as overbearing as real red hue would be. Let me just try it, and to emphasize it and really bring it towards red. And I'm not really used to doing this with the mouse. So this would be when red was also part of the color scheme. So because it is not, they decided to diminish it, or have it being diminished by all the lighting choices there, that red doesn't really feel that it is part of this color scheme here. And this is also something that helps me a lot at work, is just looking at something at thumbnail size, because let's have a look here. Because if something is clear at thumbnail size, where the important part in an image is, then you're pretty much good to go. For example, let's take this shot here. Just from squinting at it at thumbnail size, I know there is something that's important in the scene that's probably to the left. And if we see here, yeah, this kind of Betty here is apparently staged there, and also from the color scheme more important than this person here to the right from us, because also his skin is emphasized, that he's apparently sitting in some kind of light there. And also here now the red is a little bit more pronounced than we had it before. If we look at this and compare it with the other shot, where do I have it? I can't find it anymore. There it is. So again, if we look here at the scopes, you can see here this is a very simple not chromatic scheme, complementary scheme, so where the red really is now part of the color scheme there. There is no green, no yellow here, so pretty much, like I said, it's just taking out the different colors there. And I think this is pretty much a staple of Cyberpunk, not just the game, but overall of the Cyberpunk style, is to have everything relatively dark. And when you have colors, it's usually just two on opposite ends. Most of the time it's, let me just show you, it's purple and green, something like this, or purple and blue. I mean, look who's talking. I mean, I got this one lamp here that is blue and the other one here that is red, and look at this complementary color scheme, and this is why I decided on this here for my streaming setup. So the Cyberpunk look, like I said, is just a complementary color scheme, but they aren't afraid of saturation. Because usually when you see something like I've shown before with the color schemes of the shooters, where everything was just brown and drab and bleeding into each other and not very pleasing to look at, all for the sake of realism, it's not very interesting because it gets boring pretty soon. And what I can see here, what they're doing with Cyberpunk, is they're really doubling down on something that's very strongly saturated. For example, this is also something that's important when it comes to colors. You can't have your user interface be independent of your gameplay. Of course, the user interface, if it has a color, it always should again be part of the color scheme that you're going for. Like in this one here, the red, as it's very evident here, is very prominent, and everything else here is in this greenish, slightly going towards cyan there. And look at this, we got one other color, and this is this yellow here, which also complements those others quite well. So if we wanted to, again, to have something that's standing out, but also be part of this color scheme, let's make this square here on the ground. Let's make it stand out. I would go for something between magenta and blue, for example. So let's give this a try here. I'm just putting it somewhere here. And this would also work in this color scheme. Of course, yeah, I didn't do the cutout very nicely here. But again, you get the point that even when you're looking at it at thumbnail size, you can really see where the important part is, and this is the one that's standing out. Because, again, just to show you, if something is too close there on the color wheel, in terms of hue, I'll put down the saturation. Yeah, this looks like it could be blue, or maybe is it just a brighter version of this green? And also if I go in the other direction, it becomes this greenish yellow here. Yeah, is it a hue of its own there, or is it just the mixture of those two hues, and so on? So as soon as it becomes ambiguous, it doesn't look too nice. Again, if you have lots of colors in there that are all just clashing with each other. So yeah, it's like if you take a photograph that's slightly tilted, if you want to say that it's a cool effect, then go all the way and have it like 45 degrees, that it really feels like this Dutch angle. So, but I think this goes pretty much for everything. Is just if you want to have something as a stylistic element, just commit and go all the way in so that it's very clear what you're doing. I have to go now. Watch later the rest. Good night. Good night, Frank. Sorry, I haven't caught you before. So if you see this later, good night and hello again. Yeah, let's have a look at some more shots there. Yeah, again, this one here is very, very easy to spot that this is one of those complementary contrasts there. And again, for science fiction, it always has to go together with different kinds of lighting. So it's not just that you have to get the colors right, but also where the light is coming from and overall the values. Like I said, I didn't talk about brightness values as much, but they are just as important, if not I think more important than color choice, because if I take out now here the colors, even at the thumbnail level, you still know that the important part is there in the middle just because of the contrast. So the first thing is to get the values right, how bright something is, and then add color that complements it on top. Because I'm pretty sure that no matter which shot we take there, if I take out the color, it's still very clear from the staging and composition and distribution of how bright and how dark something is, the contrast where something is important. And if I bring in the color, it complements it, it gives it a certain mood. I mean, without those kind of Joshua trees, you wouldn't really be able to tell that this is some kind of desert. Maybe you could there from the ground, but this doesn't really have as much atmosphere as something that now I add here with the saturation. You can see here, this is some gorgeous late afternoon lighting situation there, and of course it looks like a desert, and the color really gives it its mood and its atmosphere. And this is, I think, why is color so important, because you can set a mood without, I don't have any audio for this, I don't have any kind of chirping insects or something, or the wind rattling or anything. I just see this image and it feels sunny, it feels warm, it feels hot, it feels like afternoon. And this is, again, if we take out the color, it also could be pretty cool. It could be a pretty frigid morning, for example. You know what, let's try this. Make this for just to show you how much color actually contributes to something. Let's I make this here now a white balance, very crappy one. Make this like it's a more of a cool morning situation. Now that it's too saturated there in the shadows, and maybe bring the blue here in the sky, also desaturated. And you can see here clearly what's going on in the scope. I just make the scope a little bit smaller when I manage to find the one corner that lets me scale it, this one here. So if we look at this, this has a completely different feeling than the yellow one. And on the scope you can see it's pretty much the opposite, the complementary color to this one here. But again, it's just that it has a completely different mood. It's more in line with this shot that comes before, now that it's blue, than with the one that comes after. So again, what does color do? For one thing is it gives something mood and atmosphere and emotion, and it also tells a story on its own. Like I said, we've all seen this, where something in a movie, where a thriller and everything is clandestine and secret, and there's a conspiracy. So the chances are pretty good that it looks more like this blue, saturated, unfriendly, has this unfriendly look and grading, maybe even quite dark and desaturated. I mean, this is just overemphasizing it, but you get my point. And all the other thing that color does is it says which things belong together, a certain coherence. This coherence in my job is mostly technical, because people shoot with different kinds of cameras and different codecs and different color spaces, and everything has to look like, this was shot at the same location and at the same time of day. And even if it was not, please make it that it looks like it was. And yeah, with, like I said, and color is emotion that you can convey, like I said, just through the use of color that we've seen here, that you don't have to spell out, you don't have to put music on, you don't have to record any kind of atmosphere sounds or even voiceover, where we just have, "It was a cold day in the desert." No, you really don't have to, because it is clear this one feels cold and kind of oppressing and dark, and this one feels warm, sunny, almost friendly even. So yeah, colors communicate certain kinds of emotions. Okay, let's see what else. I mean, I find this combination here of this fuchsia and cyan greenish very appealing, and you can see here with the saturation there, they really go all the way in with this cyberpunk. I mean, this is, to me at least personally, this is the exemplary cyberpunkish color scheme, that is just this neon fuchsia pink and this greenish blue, but both very saturated. I mean, we can try and change this. For example, I just turned down of it, well, maybe not as much, but just a little, and then maybe let's turn this blue more towards yellow or something, that to make it a bit more golden appearing. I can't get it done with just one correction, I need another, so that it looks more golden. And this purple thing here, you know what, maybe I will also make it more of a red yellow, a little bit rusty, like this. And yeah, maybe even diminish the saturation there on the yellow, so that it looks more like this kind of, yeah, brownish plastic. And this doesn't look as cyberpunky as it looked before. Where do I have it? Yeah, and you can see there just through the choice of colors there, something looks in one moment pretty technical, and in the other moment it really does not, or at least it gets some completely different kind of feeling. And yeah, this, like I said, with color, and this is a lot that you can do and communicate with color, and this I think is very well done there in this trailer here. For my taste, for example, I would have gone even further in terms of saturation and values. For example, I think at my job I had to grade once some bits and pieces of Cloud Imperium, of some cutscenes that they were just in between a feature of Squadron 42, I think it was, or any kind of Star Citizen. And yeah, I just couldn't help myself, but I tried to make it a little bit darker and a little bit more contrastier. Well, not as much, of course. Huh. Almost caught a fly there. Okay, so I would, for example, here I would turn down not as much. Apparently, yeah, this doesn't work too well there with the stream. So it probably, I'm assuming there might be some kind of lags there on the stream. But for example, if this were a movie, I would make it even darker, like this, on one hand. But of course, to have those lights in the background really, really shine bright, like this. So I would just increase here a little bit the contrast. And for my opinion there, the skin looks a little bit too yellowish, even in this lighting conditions. And I would, again, this is just personal preference, so I'm not shitting over their beautiful lighting there. And personally, I would make the skin a little bit more towards skin tone here, but maybe a more pale, that they don't look as healthy. Something like this. And now we can see here problems cropping up there in the background. If I undo now, or just deactivate my changes here, we can see also the background got affected, and now it doesn't look as nice as it looked before. Now it looks some kind of, yeah, wrong and buggy. And yeah, this means, yeah, now I would start to do some kind of masking, that it only affects to separate the foreground from the background, what's important from what's not important. And this would be, what's not important usually is something that's happening in the background here. So just to try out here another look, if what happens if I take out this green entirely, and now it still has this cyberpunky look, but it really loses this kind of toxic I meant to say toxicity and toxicness, so I mix it up. So it would lose a lot of this toxicity and this kind of fluorescent lighting there. It would look also interesting, but maybe this is maybe a little bit too gritty, for example. But again, without even looking there at the scope, again I went for something that has this kind of color scheme that's on the opposite ends, that is the complementary color scheme. Catch fly can accomplish anything. Yeah, I mean the fly apparently was too exhausted, so it wasn't too hard to catch. Again, just have a look here at the thumbnails, and to me what really makes it cyberpunky is this kind of fuchsia and blue. Like I said before, this is to me at least what sells this cyberpunk-ish appeal there. Again, we got it here, and what I deactivated now are all the colors of the titles, because apparently they decided that yellow and blue, as we have it here, make this a little bit bigger again, that those are the official cyberpunk colors. And like I said, I wouldn't have gone with this scheme personally, but then again, I think the reasoning here is everyone is doing pink and blue for cyberpunk. I mean, just have a look at Steam and go in the store and as a search word search for cyberpunk, and I think the chances are very high that you get something that has this kind of neon look. But let me just try to emulate this. That that we're more on this CGA scheme here, where it's just blue and pink, and maybe turn up even here the saturation. So I think it's a good decision that they went for yellow and light blue, because the yellow really pops. It really does. Let's have a look at this here. So where it says this November here, I mean this really pops. I just try now to have here my CGA or not, CGA look. CGA look, this was it. And also here in the ending. I mean, it would also work, but again, I think this might have been too much for a game as Cyberpunk. So the yellow, I think, because it's not, I mean, it still says cyberpunky in a sense, because it's just so bright and saturated, and also with the type, I think this works. Also, it works very well with the blue, and this might be more of an indie game appeal. I mean, we got Hotline Miami, who wasn't afraid of this hot pink there, so just my 2 cents on the color grading there on Cyberpunk. But again, like I said, it's just this boldness in terms of color use that I really find refreshing and would like to see more of. But again, of course, you have to be able to pull it off. And as always, it's this contrast and this balance, because if you have something that is not as saturated and then you step into something that is very saturated, of course, this becomes much more prominent, and instead if everything like here being saturated. For example, let's try maybe this shot here, and we say what's important about this here, because pretty much if we look at just how saturated everything is, I saturate it even further. You can see here, yes, the yellow is saturated, or let's turn it back so just before it clips. The yellow is equally saturated as the red and as the purple and as the blue. So if I want to emphasize something here, maybe let's say, this kind of pedestrian crossing there, why not? I would try first to diminish the saturation on the other colors that I don't want to emphasize. Again, it's I think this is my main point. It's just limiting information, limiting of what. So I just turn down now the saturation on everything that is not this yellow there. so that just the yellow remains and the pink is pretty strong, so I turn it down even further. And if you have a look here again now at this image there, before and after, this yellow suddenly pops a lot more, and if I increase the saturation as well, it works even better. So again, first you can, with balancing, it's just having everything in a balance, and the one outlier that you have in either direction is the one that's going to be noticed. The other thing here, again, it also works with value, because everything is here pretty dark and pretty the same brightness, and then we got pop here, this logo, and pop this neon signage here. So this really pops, but I'm not really interested, for example, in what's in the back of this car, because also the lighting is not, or what those characters are all about. It's not a story about them. But you know what? Let's try and change this shot, that we say, yeah, this shot is actually about what is going to happen here. Maybe this is an establishing shot, and the next shot will play out here. So we want to guide our viewer's eyes already to this scene here. Okay, so what I would do is, first thing is I make it a little bit more brighter and give it more of a contrast, or yeah, just more punch. Let's say, yeah, I just disabled the displaying here of my masks. So first thing is that I really give it, just so that I can see what's happening here, just pump up here the contrast. So again, this already looks like something is going on here. And maybe this, if I'm not want to overemphasize something here, maybe this could work already enough. But let's really drive the point home, and I say, I make another correction for everything outside of this, and I bring for everything, I just bring down the brightness of everything. You can see what's happening here. This is of course too much, so maybe it's just not the highlights that I bring down, but also, and here it comes, the saturation. So I desaturate everything around this here just a little bit, and we can see here now with the saturation and also with the brightness, this starts to stand out. Next thing is I also maybe diminish not just the brightest parts, but overall the contrast. And where do I have my contrast? I don't use contrast much often. There I have contrast. Yeah, of course I need to compensate for the loss of black here. And if I activate and deactivate now, yeah, again, it's clearly visible that whatever is going on here must be important, because our eyes are drawn to it. And this again is color and lighting and contrast. So this was my, I think, my more or less impromptu talk about how to draw contrast, or not how to draw the viewer's eyes with contrast and what is important. And the other thing that I start here noticing, apart from my highlight here not moving, is I don't like the colors here. And which colors I don't like, because I've increased here the brightness so much, we can see here the shortcomings of the codec, that this green blue here, there's some kind of blocking going on, and this green blue here doesn't really work with everything else. And for this I go back into this mask that's only concerned with what's happening here, and I collapse the colors, as I've said before. So let's bring the scope over here so that you can follow it. I will zoom into my scope now, that we can see what's happening. And I'm just seeing where I am. Okay. I just to locate myself there where I am on the colors, I just turn it up and down and see which pixels are actually being affected. So for example here, I want to get rid of this greenish blue and want to have it just this cool cyan blue there. And this is why I first try to push the hues into this cyan direction, and every survivors there that are just green, I just desaturate pretty severely. And once I'm done with desaturating, I'm just moving the gamma over to this blue again. And again, you can see here there are some kind of blocky artifacts going on, but if I zoom out here, yeah, this probably was too strong now. But if I zoom out here, let's Let's have it here at full screen, or let's watch it in loop. No, this was the wrong button. You can see even at the first glance that you probably your eye is just drawn to this portion here, what's going on with those characters. And again, just before, this is how it looked before, and it's more the overall scene that we are concerned with. Maybe this billboard there, I don't know, but again, yeah, I want to say a difference of night and day, but it's not. It's just a difference of night and night. Okay, Sorceress says more like more modern movies. I think they're just carving out their own style, trying to be unique. Yeah, this is, I think, the biggest problem, that everyone, of course, wants to try to be unique and stand out of the crowd. But the problem is sometimes. Yeah, it's really hard, right? And it's not just one thing to stand out. If you make a box standard shooter like everyone else, and you want to stand out by saying, yes, but our blood is green, for example, it might be not enough. If you want to stand out, yes, now I'm talking just purely visually. Colors are just perhaps one step, but for example, let's try this. What if Cyberpunk said our colors are this kind of fuchsia pink and yellow and nothing else, and they really stick to it for the entirety of the entire game, and maybe all the trailers that they do, and even in game, and suddenly you get this kind of look that I have to say looks already a little bit more interesting, because as soon as you've established that this is going to be your look overall. Okay, I can see now here some ugly stuff going on, where the yellow starts bleeding into the green here. So I might push this over as well, so that the green becomes more yellow, but before it turns to red, I just limit it to this, and you can see this nice V shape happening there on my scope. So if I said, yeah, this is going to be the look of Cyberpunk, let's say, just this, as it was before, just turning down the other colors, it would already look much more interesting, I have to say, personally. But again, I might be biased because I work a lot with colors, and sometimes clients at work tell me, yeah, you can go completely crazy with colors, knock yourself out, have fun. And then I do, and then I end like I've shown you, I just have to find this one shot that we had before. Where was it? Yeah, this one here. I'm just taking it here now as a reference to apply to everything. So yeah, clients tell me to say, yeah, knock yourself out, you can do anything, and then it looks like this, for example, and maybe even add more contrast, because I like contrast. Yeah, maybe this was a bit too much, but something like this, and then maybe make the shadows also just something like this. And maybe you know what, maybe this is a look that I like, and now I'm going to apply it now to everything else there. Of course it won't work for every shot as is, but yeah, then I end up with something like this and say, yeah, this is going to be our look, and people get freaked out by this because it just asks for so many limitations. Because if I say, yeah, everything should be this dark, this just two colors there, you can't hardly make a game or a movie with carrying through this style. And I think the hardest part is trying to find how far you can take things to stand out by, like I said, just going boldly in either direction where no man has gone before, and also make things work in the game. Because in the end, this is often a case of style over substance, where you realize that, yeah, something is just done purely for the style and everything else is just falling behind. Of course, you can't have this. But again, you really try to diminish as much as you can. But sometimes, like I said, sometimes you need 4 colors there because you can't cheat your way around those. And then it's more of instead of trying to limit everything to certain things, it's more of a thing of finding the one thing that's common to everything that you can apply to pretty much everything. For example, in this case here that I said my important color is yellow. To go entirely black and white, I would think just diminish other colors by, let's say, like 50 to 80%, and just keep the pink untouched and the yellow untouched. And you know what, I will even bring up here the brightness, the gamma again, that it's not too dark. Yeah, we got some here artifacts here where it's this green is not too pleasing. But if you have a look at this right now, it still has this, our important is yellow and this hot pink, but it's not that nothing is completely devoid of colors. Maybe in this one here it might be already a bit too much. So yeah, like I said, it's really hard finding a visual identity for your game or pretty much any kind of work of art, as long as it's has to do with visuals in one sense. But my suggestion again would be to find the one common thing that keeps everything together, like I just had here with this overly strong yellow and fuchsia and this pink, and say, yeah, maybe those are the two things that I want to connect everything. And the cool thing is, once you figured that out, and it works pretty much everywhere in your product, in your game, or in your movie, then if you take a couple of screenshots, let's with this little look that I just made, I just grab a bunch of still frames there, and then I will, this doesn't work because it got a different white balance essentially. This is another thing there. But yeah, if I say that this is my look now, and let's have a look here at, I can't get my stills any bigger there. Yeah, that we just have at a glance, it doesn't work like I intended it to work. Maybe that only if we're just looking at those thumbnails, they look like they belong to the same product. If I collect now some other thumbnails there, they look like they could belong to the row that I had on top, but not entirely. And like I said, I think this is the hardest part, to find something that is common to pretty much everything, because it might be not more than one color, and it also doesn't have to be a color. Maybe it's just a certain shape that's popping up everywhere. For example, what comes to mind always is the art design of Ubisoft games. At least to me, they really stand out in terms of how well they are with their visual communication. For example, with the reboot of Deus Ex, it's always this hexagon and the color scheme that is dark and gold. Essentially, it's just ebony and gold that's going on there as their color scheme. And of course, they have other colors and they have other scenes, but if you see screenshots of it, you pretty much can spot at a glance that, yeah, this must be the Deus Ex game, and the other one is from, let's say, Far Cry or so. So they really got this down. And also, like I said here with CD Projekt Red, they also really know their colors and their visual style. And yeah, like I said, it's pleasing to work with, or just pleasing to look at something where you can see that a lot of thoughts has been worked into it. Again, this is my usual problem. As you've seen just now while I was talking, I bumped up here the contrast. I guess this is my problem since I've been working for Red Bull and coining this Red Bull look, where everyone says, yeah, it needs to be bold and punchy, and this is just, again, this looks a little bit too milky to me, and it is sometimes I really have to go against migraine of this ingrained look that I have, that just make it bold and punchy. Oh man, again, sorry for rambling. I think I went not off a tangent, but I just kept riding this tangent to the edge of the world and then jumped with a tangent into a whole different universe of colors. But the bottom line to everything is colors are much more powerful than you would assume. And it's not just that you randomly pick some colors or some hues and just go with what sticks, or just just don't care about it. As soon as you put some thoughts into it and you realize the potential of colors for storytelling, for differentiating things, like I said, what I didn't went into so far is that also you can color code certain things in your game. I think I've had this before shortly, where everything that's, let's say your player character is yellow, so everything that's yellow, certain pickups are there to support the player, and the enemies, let's say, are green, and the spikes are green, and pretty much anything that hurts you is green, and their projectiles are some shade of green. So players, when they see two glowing orbs on the ground, the one is yellow, they pretty much go for the yellow one because they've learned somehow visually that the yellow ones always benefit them and the green ones always hurt them. And this is sometimes not really obvious even to the players, but it's just this feeling that you can communicate just through colors. What comes to mind is, was it Uncharted or The Last of Us? I think it was a Naughty Dog game where pretty much anything in the scene or in a level that was yellow, for example, just a yellow ribbon somewhere or just a yellow streak of paint that would make sense in the level, it meant you could grapple onto it and just move it for your parkour or just traversing the level. So I think it was a little bit overused there because it was overly present. But again, it's those things that you can guide your players without even telling them what to do, just through use of color and lights. Okay, man. Again, I'm really sorry for diving this deep into colors, but yeah, it's my passion, and I'm always a fan of contrast and saturated colors that are pleasing and looking nicely against each other. This wasn't quite English. So I will switch over now to my beautiful face that's absolutely not full screen capable, at least today. It's raining outside and the fan is running at speed number 3 of 4, and I really don't quite feel it. It's pretty hot here. So I hope this was interesting. Maybe you could take at least something from it, and even if the one thing is that I like my colors saturated. But again, I hope I could inspire you to look more into colors for your game, but just anything. Like I said, as you've seen it, it's just more than a random choice. Everything, I think, as long as, no matter what, if it's color, if it's sound, if it's pretty much anything, as long as I, as a player or as an audience to your art, can somehow deduce that a lot of work went into this, I can appreciate it even if I have no understanding of it at all. And you probably know the work that I produce is always leans very much into this over complicated style or over engineered style of something that nobody will appreciate, but then somebody does, and it makes me so happy. Sonsred says, it was amazing. Oh, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. Again, I'm way too giddy to talk about colors. So yeah, thank you so much for sticking with it. Now I want to be a digital colorist, and I urge you to try it out. And it doesn't cost anything. This software that I'm using, this DaVinci Black Magic DaVinci Resolve, you can get it for free. It's I think 90% of the features work in the free version. The version that I'm working with, of course, is the paid version, where you have support for 4K video and some raw decoding and denoising and so on. But really, if you want to just try this software, and there are loads of tutorials for this one. Some of them are not very good, but I really urge you to just try out. As you've seen it here with these curves, I switch just back to the screen there. With those curves where it's just hue versus hue or hue versus saturation. Maybe let's show it here also what's going on. There is, again, a lot that you can do easily and visually, especially if you have here open your scopes. And it's like I said, it's much more fun than trying to do this in Photoshop, where all you got is hue and saturation, then have to manually set the regions, and it's all a lot of pain here. And here you can really set the amount of keys that you really need. For example, let's make his jacket here of a different color then. And yeah, it really invites you to just play around with it. And this is, again, I can recommend it. DaVinci Resolve. Do I have some kind of splash screen here? Yes, DaVinci Resolve 16 is the current version. So yeah, the more the merrier. This is all I can say about colors. But again, I'm biased towards it, so I say we need more people to make games, especially independent people, because man, with all those AAA games, they are just so much of the same. I mean, they are The Last of Us 2. I haven't played it, only heard about it and saw some videos on it. It looks just amazing and gorgeous, but at the end it's just kill all the bad guys and punch them in the face and slit their throats. Yes, of course, the story is supposed to be, it's this big, grand, amazing story, but in the end of the day, the game is all about just killing people. And then there are games by tiny, small teams. For example, What Remains of Edith Finch. Gameplay-wise, it's much more varied, I feel. I mean, it's not as involved probably as The Last of Us 2, but it's like a small book where you get lots of different episodes there, and I cried at the end, and I think this is something to look more forward to, that it's more of a medium of an author. And I read today on Twitter where someone said, you don't read books, or imagine where we just have AAA books that were made by huge teams and nobody's talking about books that were written by just one person with a very strong vision in mind. So yeah, and this is why I say we need more people in games, and we also need just more people doing different kinds of self-expression. And again, I'm ranting again because color grading, I mean, I'm as a colorist, of course, I would say this, that even color grading is a sort of expression of your artistry and also what you want to communicate. Okay, again, sorry for ranting, but you probably know this right now with me. It's really hard for me not to rant. Music industry is somewhere in between. The music industry doesn't feel as bad to me as the AAA gaming industry, but again, also with the movies, as soon as it's too corporate somewhere, it feels like it loses soul to me. Again, it can be just amazing if I watch the visual effects breakdowns of the big movies. It's just mind-blowing of the amount of detail and effort that goes into it. But in the end, does it advance our medium as a whole? It doesn't. So this is why I'm a strong supporter of the indie scene, because I think if you have some people that don't have to take financial risks because they don't want to upset their shareholders or anything, and that they need to have this return on investment, that their art needs to meet the mass market, because otherwise you can't recoup the amount of money that you put in there. So as soon as you don't have anything to lose as an indie and just do what you want to do because you want to do it and it's your passion, you want to bring yourself, your innermost self out there and just do something, whatever it is, I feel personally this is to me much, much more interesting than Call of Duty 18. But that's maybe just me. Okay, I've been talking for over 2 hours. Man, time flies when you're talking about color. So again, I thank you so much for dropping by. I have no idea how many people are still watching there. I would assume it's just you, Sorceress, at this point. But again, thank you for dropping by, for watching, and probably next week I have finished this big CGI thing that I've been rendering right now, and it's not rendering anymore at this point. This is good, so this stream is coming through. I will do a big deep dive into my workflow of modeling, mapping, lighting, shading in Maya. And you know what, maybe something of this that we did today in this talking about color schemes that will prop up the next time when I'll be talking about how I did my lighting and decisions of how to stage something and how to light something. Wonderful. Okay, so I get 3 viewers and one is probably me in the other tab. So again, I thank you so much. Sorceress says a private audience. Yeah, there are other users in the list, but maybe it's just the robots talking. You never know. Everything is bots nowadays. again, yeah, thank you so much for sticking with it and even the honors of watching this in full screen. I hope you could see some of those little knobs that I was moving around in DaVinci. Again, it's a great tool. I love colors, and I hope that this carries across. And anyone who watches this, I urge you to just mess around with color schemes and color harmonies and see how far you can take things. With that being said, all my ice cubes have melted long ago, so it's not even the condensed water outside has dried. So yeah, unicorn, everyone, unicorn. Have a great week, and yes, see you next week then. Cheers.